Did you use the younger, thinner filter?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Diane, I'm here all week.
I know, you really are.
And most weekends.
All the time. All the time.
I don't want to knock it. Okay, all right. Welcome, everyone, to the second community conversation hosted by Davison Community Schools. I'm Holly Halibicki, and I'm the Executive Director of Student Services for Davison. The purpose of our community conversation is to bring a diverse set of community members together to collectively brainstorm strategies and resources to address a challenge faced by community members. Now, that could be any kind of a challenge. For our community conversation, we will center around addressing challenges faced by community members with disabilities and employment. This focus came about based on the information from our first community conversation in 2019. We will use this information from today's conversation to help us make informed decisions for the future. Our panel today is made up of parents, educators, business community members, and community members. I'd like to take a moment for each of our panel guests to introduce themselves to you and what their role is here this evening. Today's panelists are, and we'll start right here with you.
Hi, I'm Alan Rickman. I am a parent and a business owner. I own Experience Community Threads in Genesee Valley Mall, Experience Community Threads of Fenton, and ECT Montrose, and looking to expand potentially in this area as well.
Thank you, Alan.
I am Diane Rines, and I am a parent also, and I own a business.
Hi, I'm Ann Haley. I am a parent of a child with autism. In addition, I'm executive director of a nonprofit called Autism Support and Resource Center that serves the Genesee County community. Happy to be here.
My name is Don Haley. I happen to be married to Ann Haley. We together own Italian Gardens restaurants, have been in the Davison area for just over 25 years, do have a child with autism, and have other children with other unique issues as well, and we're really glad to be here.
I'm Heather Jaguar. I'm a parent of 2 children, and my youngest is on the spectrum, and I'm also a speech and language pathologist and have been for a long, long time, and I work in Lapeer with babies birth to age 3.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm Chris Graff, owner of Hank Graff Chevrolet here in Davison, parent of 2, and also a part of the Davison Community Fund.
I'm John Austin. I'm a parent of an autistic child.
I'm married to John. We're a parent to a child with autism in the high school. I'm also a paraprofessional in the district and a parent representative for Davison for the Parent Advisory Committee in Genesee County.
I'm Christy Schwabauer. I have a child with autism as well. He is graduating this year from Davison, and I'm also a paraprofessional for Davison.
Hi, I'm Jason Schwabauer, Christy's husband, and father of a graduating child of Davison, and he's on the spectrum as well.
Thank you, panelists. We are so pleased that you're here this evening to work with us. We're going to kick off tonight's event with a short interview with a former Davison graduate. This is Michaela Mathis, and she graduated from Davison High School in 2018. And Michaela is currently employed at Discount Tire. And we're going to ask Michaela a few questions. She graciously agreed to be part of our community conversation tonight to share with us some of her experiences. So, Michaela, tell us a little bit about what you do at Discount Tire.
What I do at Discount Tire is basically anywhere else would you do it at like a tire shop or like a dealership. Replace sensors, new wheels, new tires, flat repairs, rotations, roto-bees, basically same thing, but yeah, that's what I do there.
Awesome, thank you. I have a friend that got a flat tire this weekend that probably could have used your help. Yes. So tell us a little bit about what your plans are for the future, because I know you're working on some things to further your education and training.
Right now I'm in the automotive program there over at Mott over in Flint, and what I'm doing is just in the future, hopefully to be an auto mechanic, see what I can go for in the future, maybe work at a dealership or work anywhere else or maybe even open up my own business sometime in the future. Hopefully, maybe that's what I'm going to do. But yeah.
It's very exciting to hear about your aspirations and your dreams, Michaela. So tell us, you enrolled at Mott, and so first of all, tell me a little bit about your disability. What is your disability, and how does that kind of impact you?
My disability is basically, I don't really know how to call it, but it's like if I have like a test or an exam or something like that, I would have to get it read off to me. If I read it by myself, I wouldn't be able to do it by myself because I would be able to just mess everything up and just, if it's read to me better, then I understand it.
Okay. So reading sometimes presents an obstacle, but when you're listening to things and hearing things, you don't have any problem understanding them. Okay. So when you enrolled at Mott, knowing that you needed some help with tests and things like that, what did you do to make sure that you were going to be able to be successful?
Be successful, I would just, once I started at Mott, I obviously told them about my disability and told them about what was going on, and I went to Disability Services. They had me help. Usually my professor, or one of the professors I have there, there's 2 full-timers that are there, they help me out by reading off my tests and exams and like quizzes, some here and there, and then obviously due to COVID, we've been doing it online, and yeah.
How many semesters have you completed so far in your program?
I've completed, it's going to be, I just finished off my 3rd semester, so I'm in my 4th semester right now.
Great. How long is the program? Do you know how much longer you have to go?
I think I have a couple more years, maybe, something like that, but hopefully I get there soon and get to go where I'm going.
All right. Well, Michaela, I really appreciate you being here today. And what would be maybe one piece of advice or something that you would want to share with young adults, kids coming right out of high school?
Basically, just don't take anything for granted. I let these 4 years, obviously I graduated in 18, I let these 4 years go by so fast that I didn't want them to go so fast. Just be able to have fun with everybody in your life, and before you go off to college and before you go off to the universities, just have fun, live your life a little bit, and don't take anything for granted.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about the format for tonight's event. We have 6 specific questions that we're going to be asking, and we want to get input from various perspectives. And so we want to hear from the perspective of the parent, from the perspective of an employer, from the perspective of educators, and from community members. In addition, we want to be able to hear from our community at large as well. We have a chat room that is open and being monitored, and questions will be passed along to the panel as you have them and/or comments. So, without any further ado, here we go. Our first question is, as a parent, what goals do you have for your child? And I spoke with the panel before we started. All of them are parents, so we're going to open it up to them and see what they have to say. So goals that you have for your child as their adult. Panel?
I'll go first.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. I think having two boys that are very close together in age, they're 13 months apart, my goals for both of them are the same. I want them to have, be employed. I want them to have meaningful employment. I want them to be able to support themselves. I want them to have hobbies outside of their work, just kind of a well-balanced life. And I think that the biggest thing that I've been reflecting on for this community conversation is making sure that I don't put up barriers for my youngest son by thinking, is he going to be able to do this? I wonder if. And so I changed my vocabulary like I did when he was diagnosed, and I change it to, I wonder how. I wonder how we're going to get him to that employment. I wonder how we're going to get him to that independent living. I wonder how. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of what we all need to do, and I know having ties to community is a future predictor of adult success. So that's why I'm really excited about this conversation and how I can help more, because I'm really not as involved as I probably could be.
Thank you, Heather. I think that's good advice, the how. Not necessarily if or when, but how are we going to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've already learned something, right? They say you should learn something new, and certainly that is a wonderful way of looking at things. The how, I think, for a lot of times parents, we do get so bogged down, and just the concern can be overwhelming at times. And I know even from the perspective of what we do at the Autism Support and Resource Center with life skills classes for young adults is just achieving independence regardless of what your living situation might be like. In my son's case, he will likely need some level of support, but that doesn't mean that he can't be independent in the in the living environment that he will be in. Certainly he is very capable, and we just have to look to the hows instead of having those barriers be blocking.
Thank you, Anne. Who else would like to chime in on parent hopes and aspirations for their kids as adults?
I guess I'll go. I know I'm a fourth generation car dealer, and that comes with a different set of opportunities, let's say, but also expectations. And I guess reflecting on how my parents brought me up and just being very supportive of doing what I want to do, it's really helped me understand that for my children, I don't have any expectations for them from a business sense that we're going to have a fifth generation. It'd be nice, but if it happens, it happens. But just bringing it down to the core, I'd like to make sure that my kids are positively contributing to society and find a level of happiness with how they are contributing to their society. And that's really about it. It really comes down to just those two things.
Yeah. Very often finding that purpose, that they have found a purpose for that contribution. Alan, I know that you had a...
Yeah, we simplify. I've got two daughters, 11 and 13, and my wife's a teacher, and we talk about everything that we do, make sure that we're good humans, and sort of echoing what Chris said. When we make a decision, it impacts others, and we don't necessarily just look at ourselves. We have to plug ourselves in their feet or their situation or their environment to see how that really impacts them. And even at a young age, they can appreciate that when we talk about conflict resolution with their friends and someone stole someone's sidewalk chalk. Well, how can we fix that? And again, echoing, I preach and practice this everywhere. There's so many people out there that say why you can't do something. You have to have the mentality of what is it going to take to make that happen, or how can we do that? Use those people and use that as feedback to improve your system or your process, to self-critique and self-grow, but don't let that be what stops you.
So talking a little bit about having that grit and that perseverance, and then piggybacking on what Heather said of the how, because it might not be the same. You may not all get to that end result the same way, maybe creating a different path. Jason, I think I saw
I was just going to say, my biggest thing right now, especially Christian getting ready to graduate, is I want him, his purpose so far has been school, like attending school, getting, how does that work, how do we get through that? But now it gets to the point where he's almost done with school. What's the next stage? Like, I always want him to feel like he has a sense of purpose in life, where he's not well, you're done with this stage, we don't know what to do next, so we're gonna, we don't know what to do next. So that's what I think this conversation is really good to have, because I always want him to feel that sense of purpose in life, where even though he's done with school, what's the next step? What's that thing that gives him purpose to get up every day? So that's my feeling about that question.
For sure. And we know that, humans by nature want to feel that they belong, want to feel that they've got a purpose, and we're all kind of wired that way. And so you're right, when a kid is in high school, their job and their focus is very narrow on, getting to each class on time and getting the grades for this. But then what comes after that when you're getting ready to launch, so to speak? Anybody else about goals?
Yeah, it's the same thing. We said launch. Get him so Parker's not, relying on us, and he's self-sufficient, and he can go throughout the whole day without asking us questions, and he knows what to do, what the next step is. And then building on that, and then, someday we won't be around.
Right.
And that's the ultimate goal, is, that he does that.
Yeah, and maybe even opening their world up a little bit, so that if they do have questions, because we want our kids to advocate for themselves, but who do they go to if mom and dad aren't the right person or the right time to ask them, maybe?
Right. It just takes longer with an autistic child to do that.
Absolutely.
But it is achievable. And,
for sure.
So, and,
yes.
And to be happy and everything.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
We work hard. We want him to have expectations for himself. Like, we're going to help you with the how, of course, and always be there. But we want him to have goals for himself, that he wants a job that he likes, that he feels fulfilled. And we're not forcing him into something that this is what he feels is his path, and he feels good about it.
Right.
And we feel that everybody deserves that, regardless of their ability, that they like what they do every day and they're happy and contributing.
Sure. It sure does. And that kind of goes off of what Chris said too. He's not expecting necessarily a fifth generation. Find where your passion is, where your strengths are, and utilize those. I kind of reflect back to what Michaela said to us about, that she's got some goals. She may not have it narrowed down exactly, but she knows she wants to get this degree and this training, and then looking at what the options are, what that training will open up for her as options.
One more thing I wanted to add, Holly. I worked for the ISD for 20 years, and prior to doing early intervention, I did work at Lapierre's center-based program, and there was a teacher there who was an amazing teacher. And sometimes I would think, wow, you push these kids really hard. And she said, I have a lot of expectations for all of my students, and she said in most IEPs, because she taught the upper grades, she said, you don't ever want your child to lose their parents and their home and their life all in the same day. And this has been, I've been there for 20 years, and that still sticks with me. So I think as a parent having a child with some unique needs, it's like, I've got to know he's going to be okay when I'm not here anymore. I just have to know that. Right. And so that's how we do it, by them having a job and friends and support systems and, however that looks for each child. But like, they have to have a world when we're gone. They just have to.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it, Heather, because regardless of whether your child has a disability or not, because most people here have experience with disabilities and not disabilities, you want that for your child. You want to know that they are going to have that support, and they're going to be able to navigate their life and be able to advocate for the level of support that they need from time to time. Anybody else about goals as a parent for your child? All right. Anything that we need from the chat room yet, Pearl? All right. Thank you. Okay, so then we're going to go on to our next question. So the second question that we have is, as a community, what universal employment skills would members of our community need in order to be successful? So kind of what are those universal skills that we would want everybody in our community to be able to have to contribute? We heard a lot about contributing to, to the community and the world around you. What are some of those universal skills that we would want?
So I think, first of all, there is no employer that would want any employee that isn't a good citizen, that can get along with others, that looks forward, that's optimistic, that is confident to some degree. Getting along with others. If you can't get along with others, we can't use you. And conversely, if you get along with others, we're going to find something for you. There has to be some place, some skill that, because it just is a basic must for any business.
Yeah.
You have to be a good listener, and you have to let us train you or coach you. Take constructive criticism. And if you can do just some of those things, and all of them, among the others that, I'm sure we're going to talk about more things.
Absolutely.
But as far as the basic things that we look for at our restaurants, that would be it.
Thank you, Don. I enjoyed watching Michaela's head nod when you were saying those things. So obviously, as a 21-year-old young adult with her kind of first full-time job, she has recognized those things too, right, Michaela? Yeah. Okay. Other universal skills that we would want.
I think building on those comments, whether it's someone with disability or not, I think, you want people kind of in the same vein to be good people and hardworking. We take good hardworking people, and build a team out of those people. And if you've got a person that is, has those two attributes, they get a second, they get a third, they get a fourth chance if things don't go just exactly right. And if they're not those two things, then oftentimes they don't get that second chance. Because we're all human, we all don't do things perfectly. You care about the person around you, you work hard, you try hard, good things happen. And it really isn't any more complicated than that. And that applies to every employee.
Yeah, that's good to remember, and that's something that I think we need to even remember for those of you who have been through IEPs, just that kind of advice. Michaela. Nope, I will do it right here.
Since working at Discount Tire, basically what's going off of what Chris has said, basically I've had two managers. I'm on my second manager now. The first manager is he's given me a life lesson about this, about being the most perfect worker and like being the most perfect person in like the workshop. He asked me, are you perfect? And I said, no, I'm not perfect. And everybody that he's ever asked says, I'm trying to be perfect. Nobody's perfect besides Jesus. Nobody's perfect. And I've learned that a lot. And growing up and being in a Christian household, that's what we've been taught. Nobody is perfect.
But working hard. Who else would like to join in for those different strengths or those universal skills we want?
In addition to the norms, I think awareness is something that's missing sometimes. It's, whether or not it's awareness to a customer or awareness to a situation, awareness to how you're communicating to colleagues. I use a lot of phrases like, what's your 100%? And as we look across the entire spectrum of a workforce, I expect everyone to give 100%. But everyone's 100% is different, and there's so much conflict. Well, so-and-so is doing this, and so-and-so is doing that. It doesn't matter. They're giving me their 100%, or close to their 100%. The fact that that's different than yours is sort of irrelevant. So helping them be aware of that is an eye-opener for a lot of people. And yeah, they got to come to work on time and can't be on their cell phones on nonstop. But that awareness, once that clicks and resonates with them inside, that they are truly a better employee.
I think that's great advice for employers too, Alan, to recognize that everyone's 100% may be a little different. And that may even change as an employee is with you over time, that their 100% may increase as they're learning more. I saw another hand. Yeah, John.
Each individual kid with a disability has strengths and weaknesses. We have to find the right job for each one of those. And if they're in the wrong one, then they're gonna doubt themselves too. So we have to do the best you can to fit into that job so they don't get down.
Sure. And really, when we think about that, whether you have a disability or not, that's true, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing. We've all got different strengths and weaknesses. We learn how to compensate for our weaknesses and find people to surround us that will help complement, and then we go where our strengths are. And so really no difference then between that sort of thing. It's just identifying those. What other universal skills? we heard some of the basics, being on time and staying your full shift, and not missing without some kind of notification and that sort of thing, getting along with others.
I love the word grit. I heard you use that earlier. It's really one of my favorite words, just to kind of just describe that stick-to-itiveness that you need, regardless of what the job is. Again, putting in whatever your specific 100% is, and just even if you have a bad day, just kind of pulling things up and moving forward and having that grit and determination to get through, I think is important. And I think a lot of those skills, because of challenges that people with disabilities have, it's harder for them to attain things that are maybe easier for their typically developed peers. For our kids, I think that they just have a lot of grit to make things happen for them just based on their disability. They have to work harder.
So I would think that that would be one thing maybe that we would want future employers to know, is that kids with disabilities, young adults with disabilities, they're used to looking at challenges and working through those challenges.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And I would also think, I know this is something, I've got 5 kids also, my youngest are 19 and 20, and that willingness to do sometimes some crummy jobs. There are some days that you're going to be assigned cleaning the toilets at the restaurant or at the dealership or whatever the case may be, and that's what you got assigned that day. And so you got to deal with it.
Sometimes even owners have to do that.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a business owner myself. Yes, exactly. Anything else about employment skills that we would want members of our community to have?
I think one thing, and I don't know if we're going to cover it later, Holly, I think what's crossing my mind as a parent is making my child very aware of what his strengths and weaknesses are, not because we need to mask all those, but I don't think I'd make a very good basketball player, but I like to think I'm a pretty good speech pathologist.
Yes.
So it's knowing what drives you, what you like, and also knowing that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and this just happens to be yours, and being able to advocate for that, to say, Mr. Haley, I didn't really understand, can you tell me again, or that kind of thing. So that just clicking with me as a parent is some work I can do right now when my child's in 8th grade.
I think that's a very good point, Heather, and one that we could share with all of our parents, that work with your child and talk about, what do you think your strengths are? Where do you think you need extra help? Because that self-advocacy, I know that I'm an awful speller. I had to say today to my secretary, how do you spell whatever? I know that about myself, so I'm going to ask for that, and we all have that. So I think that's good, bringing that to the attention of the individual. Anything else about employment skills?
Holly, I would
yes,
say.
Diane.
Communication. I know it's very hard for my son sometimes to get out exactly what he's thinking, and especially in employment, it's so important as a boss for myself with my employees to tell them, this is what I expect, and the same for them if they don't understand, to ask that and feel okay to ask that.
Yeah. Good. All right. Anything from our? Okay. All right. We're going to move on to into the next question. Our next question is, what strengths would individuals with disabilities bring to the workforce? So we kind of talked a little bit about one. Jason, I'll let you.
I know with my son, and we're around a lot of other special needs children as well, and you see certain things that really kind of excite them, that really get them excited. And I know with our son, if he has an opportunity to work with, if he's around animals, my mother used to have chickens, and he would go out there, and when nobody else wanted to, he would go out there and sit in the coop. Like, we had to get, he wanted to sit right beside there, but that's something that made him excited. It actually motivated him to want to go work with things that maybe people necessarily wouldn't want to do, but he liked just going in there, and he would talk to them. He'd go there and hang out with them, and they would. It was funny because it was like he moved around the yard, they followed him around the yard because they knew that he cared for them. But that's something that excited him. Now, if you put him in certain other environments, he would just wander out. Like he would look to hide from the situation. But I know if we line him up with his strengths, the things that he likes, he would excel. He would probably put more care into it than a normal employee would, than a typical employee would. because it really makes him excited to be there. He doesn't worry about anything else. That's where he wants to be. So that, for me, I think most of us parents up here, we know those things, we see those things. And if we had an opportunity to line our child up and help them move in that direction of their strengths, then I know that if he had an opportunity at a farm or something, he would do great. Like he would love every minute of it he was there. So.
That's great, because, you know, I live on a small farm, and I always joke that a pitchfork is one size fits all.
Yeah,
And anybody can join in and muck the stalls. But knowing your son like I do, I know he does have a genuine love and interest in that, and he would do that all day long, whatever was on the farm.
Yep.
Whatever there was, whether it was feeding or cleaning or whatever.
Yep.
It's awesome. Anybody else about the kinds of strengths that individuals with disabilities could bring to the workforce? John?
They may have like an advantage if they wouldn't be moving on to a different job or a different college. They would be more dedicated to that job and not thinking about other stuff than a typical,
Good point. All of you that are business owners are right now, are you having any trouble finding employees right now? Yeah.
So you would have to train him, it'd take a little longer to train, but they would be there longer, so you wouldn't be going through the same process.
Yeah, that's a good point. The longevity and the loyalty to the position. And you may, like you said, you may have to spend a little more time up front with the training, but it's going to pay off later because you're not having the revolving door.
Yeah.
That's a good point, John.
Sure. So a couple things. I mean, I think with anybody, we want to match what their strengths and or their weaknesses are with what is required and makes them successful in the given job. Sure, in the restaurant business, it's either an entry-level position or a career position. What some kids, younger people, if it's entry-level position, would find as boring or monotonous, others would love the routine. They would love the routine. And
yeah, they're able to do repetitive without actually getting bored, like another person's mind might start wandering.
That's somebody I want.
Yeah.
That's somebody I want. But we got to put them in the right position.
Sure.
So, not jumping ahead to 4, but this sort of mirrors a little bit, because when I look at a team, most of the time I'm looking not at individual, and so some disruptions in the team happen when people feel like they're not pulling their own weight, but when you have someone and you have them aligned with the right job that energizes them and motivates them, it's a little bit of a struggle sometimes to show the team how the team is stronger with that person fulfilling a role that they can become a vice president at, they can become an expert at. And I've went out at many jobs and said, you are the vice president of keeping the toilet paper filled every day. I mean, because someone has to do that. And whatever that is, great. And then that person is integrated. They feel like they are truly part of that team. And you've got the buy-in from 3 or 4 others. But, not just looking at the individual, on the team, when someone has a disability and they find a mentor, you find people on your team that you've never asked them to do things like that before, and they are excellent. And I'm struggling with my 13-year-old daughter. COVID has affected her like it has affected all of us. She went from going 100 miles an hour, 7 days a week, to a screeching halt, running into a brick wall. And that's caused her to veer off on a bad path. But the path that's going to get her back? She is amazing with little children. So I can take away her art supplies, I can take away karate, I can take away everything. But if I take away her ability to interact and be a good model for the little kids in the street or in the neighborhood, that's what hurts. Well, that same philosophy applies in the workforce. You've got staff that are itching to do more. They've never been put in that opportunity. Now, all of a sudden, if you've got someone that needs a little bit extra attention, whatever it is, they have an opportunity to be successful and shine, and that grows your team more. And that's what the goal is.
Yeah. I think it just creates a culture of inclusiveness as well. Like you said, it maybe gives other staff members an opportunity to be mentored to those and gives them a chance to shine as well. I know even in the restaurants, we have individuals with disabilities, and it's heartwarming to see the other staff members, kind of come in to support them and to, help them be successful too. And so I think that's just, again, getting back to being good citizens from the first question, I think that's, just another important aspect of what they would bring to a workforce and a culture.
Michaela, I was wondering, have you had to work on teams? Or do you work individually by yourself in your job?
I work with everybody.
Okay.
Like basically, like if somebody's having a hard time doing this, I help them out. We just can't be there at the point where someone does it.
Right.
You gotta do something, you gotta do this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else about individuals with disabilities in the workforce? I kind of thought of a couple things as people were talking. We have in any given population, there's a continuum of skills and a continuum of support that is needed. And some people need a lot more support, some people need less support. And I was thinking about, Don, it made me think when you said you've got some entry-level positions, and yet for some of our kids, what I may see as an entry-level position could be a lifelong career for them. They might be perfectly happy and satisfied, and that might be their 100%, like you said, Alan, and that might really do it. Whereas for other kids, knowing Michaela like I do from school and so on, she could get in and she could be a mentor to someone else in the workforce and be a somebody who's training other people in that respect.
I think in our dealerships, every job is an entry-level job, and some, we're a big promote from within type of company, and we've had a lot of upward mobility, but we've got a lot of people that have found the right place for them, and they're happy doing what they're doing. My grandfather taught me if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So if you're lucky to find that spot, and you're getting up in the morning saying, "Oh, I'm going to work," not "I'm going to work," you're probably in the right place. There's lots of opportunity for that.
So I've got a couple of comments and some things from our chat room. We've heard that such a good point, somebody mentioned that it was such a good point that the person gets to choose the employment area of contribution that is very fulfilling for them, and what might be fulfilling for you is not necessarily going to be fulfilling for me. But being able to choose that, and then you become a great contributor to our community. The other thing that was brought up is that this person thought that many times those who have maybe struggled in school or in another area of their life have the ability to relate to that, and if they see that in a coworker or something like that, then sometimes they can be an asset in that respect as well. And I think that this comment had to do with our strengths that students with disabilities might bring to the table. Very often, some of our students with disabilities are almost what you would call blatantly honest. And maybe sometimes to a fault. However, that could be a strength if it is, kind of channeled and coached and so on for the workplace. And then we've also got, people commenting that it's such so exciting to hear about inclusive environments and the team building, and that there are lots of things that can be done through that team kind of model. We even use that, we're starting to use that more and more here in our schools, K through 12, where we are hooking kids up with what we call links. And those are peer models for people who don't know this. So you take two students, one of them is the link and one of them is the buddy. You hook them up together, partner them. They may go to class together or sit together at lunch. And then you've got a peer, the same age, because we know that kids learn better from each other, and can really, that can be really impactful. And so then you've got somebody kind of the same age modeling those behaviors, modeling the expectations, modeling the skill, whatever that may be. And that could be, kind of pulled over into the workforce. I think that's kind of a lot like what Alan was talking about too.
I was thinking about that, Holly, on that last question about how grateful I am that Garrett has been born now and not 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and how we are doing more to just normalize everybody is different. And I thought of Links, and that's such a wonderful program, because if a kid has been a Link through school, and they're through lots of schools, when they come and maybe they work for you guys too, they're already familiar. They're like, oh, I know how to do this. I've gotten trained on this. I know this. And sometimes it's great because a peer buddy might say, knock it off, quit doing that. Whereas adults can be like, no, we can't do that because, so I think that's wonderful to create more inclusions for opportunity. And this is an aside, we've done Power Camp with Ann through ASRC with the peer buddies, and that has just been an amazing experience for everybody. So I like all these opportunities for people not to be scared of individuals with disabilities.
Right, right. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. So this next question is thinking about what barriers do you perceive in employing individuals with disabilities? So because we want to increase employment opportunities for everyone, what are some barriers that we might have to think about and strategize to overcome those barriers? Chris?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in a dealership, and there's a lot of different jobs that require a lot of different skills. And I think as we have our managers hiring for those various positions, probably the biggest barrier is the fear of the unknown. Now disability is it's a very broad term, and for an untrained, unskilled, boss, I think it's a scary thing to figure out. Okay, how do I make this work? How do I make? And you go back to some of the strengths, the enthusiasm, the focus, the routine, the blatantly honest people, and the real strengths that they have, to bring to the workforce. It's still that fear of the unknown. It's that. What are their abilities? And once again, disability, is such a broad thing. Right. So if you can pair up what that person is good at, and play off those strengths, then it's a wonderful marriage, really. Right. But the fear is that, okay, what does that mean? And that fear of what that means, I think, is a real barrier.
So Chris, from a, from a business perspective, and I wrote down, you said untrained boss, maybe someone who doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience with dealing with people with disabilities, and it is such a huge continuum, like we said. What would be something that we could do, even as a school or a community, to address that?
You're skipping on to the next question already.
Oh, I am, sorry. I'm not on the next note card, I'm still on number 9. Okay.
Well, I think I'll answer that.
Sure.
I think that you're really understanding the skill level, the abilities, the limitations, on both ends. Because everyone needs help, and everyone's the best at something. So understanding where a person needs help and where they're the best at can help us, find the right place for that person, or figure out if that person's not the right person for that. But having that confidence, it's almost like having, so the thing that came to my mind is to have, I don't know the right term for it, but it would be a person that would help us understand, what the abilities, what the strengths of that person really are.
Somebody that knows how they work.
Yeah, like a counselor that could counsel us as much as the student.
Coaching, but also coaching for the employer.
Well, I think coaching to a certain extent, but like Don said, I mean, we help people, we train people, so understanding how to do the job, isn't that doesn't scare me. It's finding a way to, help our people help our people.
Yeah.
Once again, overcoming that fear of the unknown is part of it. But if there's ways that we can help people be, what are all the things we talked about? To be hardworking, to be ethical, to be good people, to be reliable. Because that's what we do every day as managers. That's what we're trying to make our businesses as good for each other, as good for our customers as possible. How do we make everything fit?
It's going to have to be the right kind of manager to take on that job and have some patience and understand that say what the task is and see if they understand it. It's going to take time, but it can be done.
Are you saying too, though, like if you had, like, say you had a special needs person come in for employment, if you had a list of, if you knew what their strengths, but not only their strengths, but their weaknesses, if you knew that ahead of time, if they brought that in and showed you what their strengths and weaknesses were, things that they probably should or shouldn't do, would that help employers? Because I'm thinking if they had a way of kind of organizing that beforehand, like if we knew that our children were looking for employment, and we knew the things that they were good at, things that they weren't good at, and the children also knew that. But if they walked into an interview setting or something like that, they probably, I know my son, he probably wouldn't give you direct answers. But if there was something that the school either helped with or the parents helped with, and gave you an opportunity to know what their strengths and weaknesses were, that way you kind of knew also too where to direct them if there was even opportunity for them to even work there, you know, like you can see where they were coming from.
I mean, what you're describing is almost like an independent assessment.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I think that would be helpful. I don't think that's enough. I think, and then you alluded, you know, it would almost be like an interview coach that would go with that person on that job interview. Someone that knew them well enough, whether it be a parent, whether it be someone associated with the skills, because, you know, there's tons of opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, and certainly in car dealerships, certainly in restaurants, certainly, I mean, we need people, you know, right now, and everyone is the best at something.
Yeah.
And finding that, what they're best at, and incorporating, you know, them into that position. And in a dealership, many of those are team positions, but not all of them. That's why, you know, I didn't answer some of the questions earlier because there's a huge, wide spectrum of jobs that are out there, the jobs that are needed. And some of them are very team-based and some of them are not. But I guess it's helping a fearful, a fear of the unknown manager have a little confidence that, okay, this person, like in our, you know, what we do is that we've got cars that are, I mean, I've got a 14-year-old that's getting ready to do driver's training, and I just had a conversation. You know, this isn't a car. This is this is an instrument of death. I mean, you've got to be, you know, right. And so we're working on those cars. So let's make sure that, you know, that we take that level of responsibility. That's a scare tactic, and I don't, you know, maybe that's too much, but, you know, you want people to think, you know, about the severity of what we're doing, what the severity could be. So, you know, and then we've got two sides of it. It's giving our customers confidence that it's being done the right way, you know, but then it's also giving, you know, the team the confidence that it's being the right way. I think there's tons of opportunities. So, you know, I'd hate to see that fear of the unknown stand in the way of a perfect job for a perfect person.
Right.
And as a parent, it's funny you say there's plenty of opportunity because we worry that there is an opportunity. So it's good to hear that it's out there because we worry exactly the opposite. What are they going to do? Where can they go? How are they going to? So that's good to hear that.
I'm sorry, I think there's more opportunity today than there's ever been. We can't find people.
And we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
You know, we don't know. We've seen, you know, people that collect grocery cards at Meyer and Kroger, and that's great. If that's what my son wants to do, you're going to do it to the best of your ability. But he hates to be cold and he hates to be warm. So I'm thinking that's not going to work. So it's like we don't know where to start. But I think that this is another leading to the next community conversation.
You don't know who's willing to take this on.
Right.
And it's a little bit easier for me. I mean, I have, you know, learning disabilities in my family. I've got a you know, a cousin that is you know, she's almost my age, and she's been working in the restaurant business, frankly, for her entire life and does great. Yeah. You know, so, but I think I might have a slightly deeper level of understanding than other managers. And but whether it's with people with disabilities or not, I firmly believe that, you know, everyone is the best at something, and if you can find that right situation, you know, sometimes our problem is finding the people that are just trying to climb that ladder, you know, and to find somebody that's described as routine, you know. you know what, that's wonderful sometimes.
There were things that we thought were obstacles, and we're like, oh, he can't have the cold or hot, and then something that happened and overcame it. And I don't know what happened, but he did, you know. So you can't, like, we think it's worked out a lot of times, but we should.
Right? Not if, how.
Yeah, yes. No.
So I want to go back to the question here, because I think, Alan, you may have had something. What barriers do you perceive in employing individuals with disabilities? So we heard that possibly the fear of unknown from, people who hire or managers. Are there other barriers that you've heard of or that you've encountered or perceived?
This is probably harsh, but we sabotage our own success. I mean, I've been fortunate that we have a lot of students at 2 of the 3 locations that I have that come in for, sometimes they're short-term assessment, other times they're longer. And nothing gets me set off faster, than someone else doing their job. We're sabotaging that person's success. We're taking the opportunity that's hard for them to get that opportunity in the first place. And then one of my managers or one of my other associates are like, well, it's just easier for me to do it. No, it's not easier for you to do it, but that's the choice that, I don't know if it's 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, but more often than not, when you have someone they don't understand the bigger picture, that's not connected, they don't have some reason why it's important to them, they choose that because that's the path of least resistance. I can get this done. It takes me 5 minutes. I don't care that so-and-so else was supposed to do it and they had 2 hours to do it. It's done. Alan's not going to go off because it didn't get done.
It's the same as parenting.
That's what I was going to say.
There's the hard that'll pay off later. So.
Yeah.
And then I want to go back and ask Katie, Katie, why is it that you can take initiative with that project but not the 16 other projects that I know you see as you're walking from point A to point B?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, John, when you're trying to teach your child to tie their shoes or something like that, and how often you may jump in and do it. Michaela.
That's the same thing going off of what you've been saying. Basically, our manager would say, beginning of the morning huddles before we start the day, is if they put you at service coordinator, and obviously service coordinator is where they run the back room. We have another one who is in another side. There's 2 cells. The first cell is the main cell. The second cell is basically just a runoff one. And then basically he tells us if you can't run the back room and you can't tell people what you're doing and you can't tell them what to do, if you can't tell them to do their job or this, they don't trust you anymore. And they're just going to kick it off to somebody who they can trust and make them run the job better and be more successful as a business altogether as a team.
Thank you. I know we had a comment, and so I want to ask this question from a person who is watching. It says that I hear the employees saying, so this is what she's kind of summarizing, if we as parents and educators help to build a strong work ethic and strong citizenship skills, and we train them to do the job that suits them, that the employers will train them to do the job that suits them. So if we as a school and parents can get that grit and that citizenship, then employers will train on the specific job. Is that kind of an accurate reflection?
We'll fight over that employee.
Okay.
I like that.
Our business is a lot better than the restaurant.
I don't know.
That's good. We want a little competition for our kids, right, parents? Let's get this going, right? So some other things that I heard, fear of the unknown, the right fit, and that there are a large variety of jobs right now, probably more so than what we've seen. All of us probably, I won't say you're as old as me, but kind of in the same maybe decade or two, and it was pounded into our heads, certain things that you had to do, and right now, there are jobs everywhere that could fit a lot of different talents and interests and things like that. I mean, they're out there if you're going to show up. People are going to be happy to have you. One thing before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to share with everybody that we had some information from the Disability Network, and we've posted it in our chat room. And the Disability Network, I'm going to read from their program. They shared this with me. One of their employees by the name of Megan. They actually have some summer programs that are coming up. And so this is posted in the chat room, but the description is that students will bring the game of life alive through hands-on learning and exploring life lessons. And they're going to be doing some things on cooking, building a house out of cardboard, creating a life board, smart money. They're going to have some guest speakers, which are going to include construction worker, a barber and hairdresser, a chef, and more. And then they're going to be doing some field trips as well. They're also going to do some college tours, some job tours, and a career day. And it looks like transportation is going to be provided for those tours and things like that. So that's another opportunity that sometimes maybe isn't out, that we don't know about. And so making sure that we've got that out there. Any other barriers that, that we want to talk about for employing individuals with disabilities?
I'd like to add.
Sure.
I know transportation can be a huge barrier for especially young adults who might be living on their own but still don't have the ability to drive. And so, whether that's learning how to navigate public transportation that's available, learning how to advocate if something is not to your liking or to your safety standard with, regard to public transportation, I think is critical. And just knowing more about that, I think as a community, I know it's a real huge barrier. We see it at the Autism Support and Resource Center. Even some young adults who come to our classes really struggle, with that. They're very capable. We have young adults there who have associate's degrees, and some even have bachelor's degrees in a field, but it's getting to their place of employment that can be a real challenge, in addition to some other of the barriers that we discussed. But I know transportation is huge, and I'm not sure, as a community and society what can be done, but I think it's something that deserves some attention, as well, just to help people get to where they need to be successful.
Yeah, that is one thing that we talked about at our last community conversation, and it does continue to come up. You've got young adults who are willing to do a job, whether that's working on a farm or bagging groceries or working custodial or maintenance kind of thing, but being able to transport and get there.
Right.
And so, yeah, that is something that we do need to spend some time problem solving around. So now I know that Chris gave us some ideas about overcoming those barriers, but let's think about some of those strengths that we said that our students can bring to the workforce, and how can we use some of that to overcome some of the barriers, or what do we need to do to overcome some of these barriers? This is the big question. I warmed you up now with all these other ones. Now here's the big one.
Since this is a community conversation, maybe one of the things, and I don't even know, maybe this is the community conversation for next year, but giving kids volunteer opportunities at local businesses somehow, some way. I don't know what that looks like, but your employees might be a little less fearful if somebody just came and did a rotation, and then they could get some honest feedback about what went well, what could be a work in progress, what comes next, because some of it is just getting them to have the opportunity because of some of the unique challenges they face. And I know most of us are talking about autism, and so at the core of that, it's a communication and social deficit, and we live in a communicative and social world. So I don't know, it's just a way of making them more involved in the community so that they're not an anomaly, I guess. That it's like, okay, we can do this. It might not be the easiest, and this is what we're going to need to put in place up front, but then maybe I'm going to have this employee for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years and not be training somebody again. So I don't know how that would work.
Or they're exposed when they say you went to that restaurant and that person is still there. Other people are going to see that instead of the constant turnover of other people. So to get the word out, it helps take care of itself.
I think too, the entire structure that exists for getting a job, just to kind of piggyback on the whole communication and social piece is, you fill out a resume and you get called for an interview. And I know, again, just talking specifically about ASD characteristics, our kids, will freeze in an interview.
Oh, for sure.
There's the eye contact, there's asking specific questions. And so the behavior that might be observed in an interview setting might cause an employer to say they're not interested, or they really don't seem like they would, fit in our culture. But then I hear all these parents talking about the wonderful strengths that are observed by you guys, and it's the interviewer or the employer is not going to be able to see those strengths in a typical interview session. And I know you hear of like places like Microsoft that have more of like working interviews where they're actually able to see, skill sets come alive. I don't know, or just some sort of job fair where our employer, a specific job fair for people with disabilities where they would feel maybe more at ease in an environment like their school that they're used to. Or, I don't know, I know I'm just brainstorming, but if an employer can't see the skills that we see in our own kids or our friends' kids, how can we expect them to be viewed as a potential success in a place of employment? So,
I agree. There's no relationship between how well you interview and how well you may perform the given job. I've had plenty of people that have done outstanding in an interview and they've lasted 2 days, and others that we took a shot on and they're still with me years later.
I see some shaking heads from employers. So.
Real quick, I have an employee at one of my locations, and we gave him a shot as a dishwasher years ago, 5 years. And I ran into his dad a couple of years after he'd worked for us. And of course, the individual had asked, the line cooks, I'm tired of washing dishes, I want to cook on the line. And his dad said to me, I'll never.
Too. I mean, I think that he was so determined to be a line cook, and that was what got him there, and then just,
and now he wants to run the line.
Right.
Now he wants to run the line.
He's proven to be so successful and really an integral part of, he's someone that we really depend on and you could call, more so maybe than other people who aren't disabled, and just because he loves what he does, loves the restaurant, loves being able to showcase his talents. It really, I think, is good for his esteem and him feeling good about the person who he is and the contributions that he makes. So.
Just one other thought that came to my mind as Heather was speaking, as far as the volunteerism. I think it's a great opportunity, but, even as a student volunteer, a business doesn't want to take on, I hate to use the word, but liability, and if depending on where they are on the spectrum, if this is a communication thing, and I'm just thinking of all the different programs that high schools have, would you pair up mentors? Would you have 2 people volunteering,
and those are things that we've been in discussion about, Chris, recently, and we've got some ideas for that, and some of these folks here have sat in on some of my meetings with regards to that and what our vision is, and that's the long-term, one of the long-term goals that we've got is using our links who are mentoring and models for peers, and then maybe sending both people to some kind of a job exploration. So you've got a built-in job coach, so to speak. Right.
The link doesn't have to be permanent, just
exactly, yeah. And so those are some things that we're thinking about, and definitely on the,
if they're comfortable in the environment,
on the horizon.
Yeah, you didn't have that piece of information, sorry. You didn't have the conversation that we were going to send. I would just send it by themselves.
It was great, and COVID hit, and
right.
but we're getting better.
Yeah, we are. I saw, I've been researching some of this, and one of the things that I saw, it kind of reminded me of something, I think maybe Ann said it. There was a school, and it wasn't in Michigan, it was another state, and they actually had a work skills Olympics. And so they had certain work skills with all these different stations, and then they brought in employers or community members, and kids actually got rated on how they did those work skills, and it was kind of an Olympics, so maybe you're making an omelet, and you've got some people there doing that, or maybe you're changing a tire, or whatever the case may be, and they called it some kind of a work skills Olympics or something, and that kind of made me think of that. And that's something that's in my to-do file. So yeah, I think that's a great thing. And then that could help to kind of piggyback on what Chris said with overcoming some of that unknown or the fear. If you're bringing employers in or community members in and you're seeing kids perform different kinds of skills, and like we've said, we've got a whole continuum. We've got kids who are cognitively impaired, and we've got kids who are on the spectrum, and we've got kids who their disability may be ADHD, or we've got kids who maybe have a reading disability or something. And so there's such a broad range. And so in those Olympics, some of it was, some stations for certain kids was doing laundry and doing it right, while other kids were changing the oil, kind of thing. So it was really a neat thing and something that I put in the to-do pile. And now that I've said it publicly, I'll need volunteers to help me. Got it. Okay, so then the last question that we've got is how do we, and we've kind of addressed some of this, how do we connect employees, future employees, potential employees, to jobs in our community? This is the...
I know for me, like, with Christian at this point, as a parent, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I'm not super concerned about him making money at this point. It's having the opportunity to have a sense of purpose. So, like people have been talking about having some kind of like voluntary time to actually come in and try different things or do jobs, but not even on a paid. I wouldn't even be concerned about him making money, because I also understand too as a parent. I try to look at it from the employer perspective as well. I understand if my son comes in, he's not going to be a huge asset right off the bat. Like I understand that, and I understand it. That he's going to need extra work. He's going to have to be trained a lot longer, and I understand it. A business is a business. They have to make money what they're doing. So for me, it's more of the opportunity than really the money at this point. I don't even care if he was being paid. He's well taken care of. I'm more looking down the line. If it takes years to get him to a point where he is an asset to a company, but he just needs to put in the time to get trained, I'm not worried about him getting paid at this moment. Like a lot of us parents, we all think it's beyond us that fears us the most. It's what happens after we're gone. That's what fears us the most. So how do we make that transition beyond us? And so for me, it's just to reiterate, it's not about the money at this moment. It's about getting the opportunity to actually train him to have a future. So that's the big thing for me.
Right. Thank you, Jamie. Who else? Connecting employees with jobs. We had a comment, and maybe this will give some of you a little more think time. We had a comment from one of our online viewers that one thing that happens in schools often is that when individuals are still in the school and a team is working to support that transition for the student, that sometimes school teams, including teacher consultants or teachers, have met with employees and partnered with community agencies to help build that bridge. And I know that Dana and John have participated in something similar to that we've been doing this year in where we've been working on a pilot called Build Your Future, and working to connect, partner with some potential employers and experiences that are in his interest area.
Oh, that's great.
And can you give us a little idea of what you do at your autism support and research, because your work there supports some of this as well.
Yes, yeah, we do. So we're a nonprofit that's been around since the early 2000s. It was started by parents and grandparents who at that time, just to echo on what you said earlier, how we feel grateful for our kids to be at the age they are now, because back then there were not as many resources, and so parents were really feeling scared and alone. And so over the years, it's just grown into an organization that we offer social, recreational, and life skills programming. So that's across the age span. Specifically, our Life Skills Center focuses on helping teens and young adults with gaining independence and life skills. So we have general life skills classes which focus on cooking, meal planning, budgeting, even basic home maintenance, how to change a light bulb, how to, operate a washer and dryer, a dishwasher, et cetera. We then have classes that also focus on pre-employment skills. So we work on how to write a resume, how to create a professional social media, maybe a LinkedIn profile. We also work on interview skills with them, and also things like workplace conflict. So working with them, kind of doing some role play, setting up situations that might cause workplace drama. How would you handle a coworker taking your sandwich out of the refrigerator, or eating your lunch on accident? How would you resolve that situation? And so just things that would maybe happen in the workplace that would need some help with problem solving. As an organization, we would love to know what employers are available. We've done obviously some work organically with Italia Gardens, which has been great for both, but certainly would love to have more awareness of what companies and what businesses in the area would be willing to help people find employment.
I really don't want this to sound like a commercial for my store in Flint, but we launched that store with the sole purpose of it being an extended classroom for students of all skills. I want students making purchasing decisions for me. I want students making those decisions and partnering with the schools in the GISD. And Jennifer, any student that she has that wants a place there, she knows she has a place, whether or not it's creative, whether or not someone doing the design for the windows, running our social media, whatever. We invested that money for that purpose in that location, centrally located. Everyone knows where it's at. So you're looking for places, okay, doors open. And my crystal ball is generally pretty accurate. And I see great things coming from it. It's just COVID, whack, schools, pull plug, and you can't. I mean, I don't know how many are teachers. You can't put anything more on my wife's plate as a teacher, and I'm sure that every one of you are in the exact same boat. So when the time is right for that, that is going to be a model that is going to be successful, because I know it will be successful, and it's going to open up a ton of opportunities, not just for students at this level or this level or this level. You're investing tens of thousands of dollars of my money to help that program, and oh, by the way, it's already paid for. You're just we're going to keep growing it, and it can be duplicated easy, whether or not it's here in Davison or in Clio or in South Lyon or all those other spots, and it's pretty doggone cool. It's environmentally friendly and all of those good things. So there's an opportunity there for anyone that's looking for a spot to try a wide range of skills. It's all retail focused. But at the end of the day, all these things we're talking about can be easily applied anywhere. Customer service, reliability, dedication, communication, team building.
How would we have heard to go to you?
I don't know how. So unless, how would you have found out about me? Unless you were plugged into like one of MRS or the GISD, Jen, I don't know her last name.
But it's Jen Ragnon, but you have to be in MRS in order to so that's why that MRS case is so important.
Or you're someone that shops at one of the stores or follows me and they hear me talking, and that's small.
And we hadn't heard of you, so that's, and we're just getting involved with MRS because our child just turned 18, so.
So there's the answer. I don't know what happens behind the scenes. I don't know that. That's not my forte.
And as far as MRS goes, people can open up cases with that as early as age 14 to be able to start accessing those services. But those are really the adult services that follow a student with a disability for the rest of their life and help with those services and training and so on. We had some comments from the chat room, looking at transportation, and one of our people that are watching talked about, if we're in a community maybe that doesn't have that mass transportation as much, is there some type of Uber or Lyft with drivers who have some specific training in disabilities that could be working toward that. And then just another chat or another comment about volunteer opportunities and so on is a good way to get to know have the future employer kind of get to know and learn about students. It's kind of the dress rehearsal almost, you know, to see things. Any other ideas on connecting employees to jobs in the community? Anything else that we want to share before we close out this evening's
Do you have anyone in the high schools, as people are ready to get into the job world, that are just looking at postings, job postings, and trying to match people up with what they think they can do?
That's a great idea, Chris, just to have somebody watching those postings and then doing some matchups. And that might even be something that, you know, special ed teachers have their case managers for a certain number of kids. They kind of oversee that student's case. And maybe that's something that, you know, they could work on with a student even. You know, let's look at these job postings and let's just see what's out there and see if there's anything that interests you and so on. Good. Anything else? Okay. Any parting comments for this evening? Anything that anybody would like to share that's, you know, just was on their mind but maybe wasn't in one of the specific questions? Okay, you guys all learned how to do school really well. John, yes?
I guess we covered it all.
Okay. Anything left in our chat room, Mr. Gilbert? Okay. So with that, I want to thank our virtual folks for joining us this evening. That was great to have you, and it was nice to hear your comments and suggestions and so on. And I'd like to thank our panelists. Each one of you brought a very unique and a great perspective to this. And I've got some people at home that are watching, taking notes for us so that we're able to capture all of this discussion, and then we'll be able to review these things. So thank you to all of you for being willing to join us this evening for this very important work, something that I'm very passionate about getting rolling. And Michaela, thank you to you for being willing to come and to contribute and share your experiences with us. We appreciate it. And so with that, we will, oh, and yes, thank you, Mr. Gilbert, for that reminder. Thank you to our interpreters for being here this evening. We certainly appreciate that as well. And so with that, we will say good night, and we look forward to doing this again. So watch for that. Good evening.